Have you ever felt proud to be lazy? Well, today's guest, Natalie Palmer, certainly is. But don't let that fool you, because Natalie has turned her self-proclaimed laziness into a successful career. She's a top Airbnb host, founder of a boutique vacation rental management company, and the co-founder of the largest women's STR conference, Level Up Your Listing Summit. And if that's not enough, her podcast, No Vacancy, is in the top 1% worldwide. Today, Natalie joined us to share how she built multiple income streams by embracing boundaries, doubling down on personal branding, and focusing her expertise in the real estate niche.
I don't know how to brand a short-term rental, so I'll bring on an expert for that category. And I think maybe just kind of that humility and like admitting that I don't know everything, but I can connect you with the right person. I'm lazy, so I just don't want to do those things. I'll figure out how to get someone else to get it done for me.
Today, we're going to learn the power of establishing a personal brand, why creators should niche down, and how to grow a podcast to the top 1%. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Hey Natalie, welcome to the show.
Hi Brian, thank you for having me.
Yeah, my first question for you is, what would you say is the biggest thing that you did or are doing that has helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, this is kind of a broad answer, but I guess I'd say the internet and like social media, email, having a website. It's kind of crazy to think about. I have 3 kids at home and I work from home, and just thinking about the reach that I've had and being able to help people every day, just literally from a laptop and a keyboard. So I would just say that accessibility.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It's incredible how much opportunity there is on the internet, and like just to have something out there that people can potentially connect with you, purchase from you, is so powerful. So you describe yourself as proudly lazy. Can you kind of explain how this mindset has contributed to your business success?
Yeah, this is something I've definitely had to reframe in my own mind. Growing up, I have a younger sister, and she was definitely the overachiever. She's got a master's degree. She's a data scientist now. Like, she's the one that my parents brag about at their cocktail parties that they go to. And then I was always the one who I just would jump from one thing to the next. I'd get bored of things very quickly. I really wanted things to come more easily, and I just never subscribed to the idea that I would have to be working 40 plus hours a week and not retire until my 60s. So my parents always kind of compared me as being the lazy one. And it wasn't until after college that I think I started to realize maybe there's kind of a method to this madness, and being chronically lazy really made me want to optimize things and like set up automations very early on in my entrepreneurial journey. As soon as I had to repeat a task more than once, it was like, okay, we're figuring out a way to optimize this or outsource this or get this off my plate. And I'm really proud to say now I like really wear it as a badge of honor. I work 18 hours a week. I have help 3 days a week for 6 hours each day, and that's it. And the rest of the time I'm with my kids, and it gives me so much time to just think and brainstorm about what I want to do, and come up with new ideas for the business. But like working on the business, I really like, I'm lazy. So I just don't want to do those things. I'll figure out how to get someone else to get it done for me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. For myself, I feel like now more of a traditional 40-hour-ish work week is good for me, but I have a schedule where like usually most of Thursdays I take off, and then I'll work for a little bit on Sunday instead, because then like there's no communication with team or customers or anything like that, so I can like really focus on things. But I think for me at least, it doesn't make sense to definitely work more than that. And if anything, I would work less, because like you said, the time outside of the business, like that's what allows you to reflect and be more creative. And I think that I'm able to be more productive when I am working by giving myself that, instead of saying like, oh, well, it would be better if I found a way to work a couple extra hours here or there.
Totally. And I think another thing is limiting your work hours too. It really forces you to prioritize. We've all heard of the Pareto principle, right? Like 80% of results are affected by 20% of your actions. So that is a huge mindset I carry with me too. It's like when I sit down, I'm like, I have 18 hours this week. Like if something is not bringing in income or moving the lever in any way or helping build my brand, like it's off the list. That's it. We're just not pursuing it right now. Maybe in the future when my kids are older, I'll up my work hours. But for right now, I like really have to focus on that 20% that's going to have the biggest results.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's so important for entrepreneurs. And it's more common, especially when starting out, that it's like, oh, I can work whenever. So I'm going to respond to that email really late. But having a schedule and being strict with yourself is really, I think, kind of necessary. And for me, like I track every minute of when I'm working. So like my timer right now, I can tell you, it says 16 minutes. I took a break right before recording this interview. I came back on and I track every minute just to know like how much am I really working? Did I actually work this like today, or was I like busy doing something else? And making sure that the time that I am spending working is really spent on the right things.
Yeah, it's tough because you'll feel like you've been productive all day. And then it's like, what did I do? All I did was respond to emails today. Like, and as soon as you clear your inbox, you have 10 more people that responded in that meantime. And now that takes up more time. So that's really good that you're tracking every minute. That's actually something I need to do. I'm more like, okay, I have my 6 hours each day. I want to fill those, but tracking by minute, I need to get on that level.
Yeah, I just use like a simple timer in like my menu bar that I just turn it on and turn it off. And I've just built a habit of doing that. But I'm not like so organized that I'm saying exactly like I was on this website or I was working on this specific thing. It's just really to count the hours and be more aware of that.
I like it. Yeah. Because I know a lot of people do the time blocking, like literally down to like categorize this was spent on emails, this was spent on my, whatever, bookkeeping, yada, yada, marketing over here. And it just seems so overwhelming. I'm lazy, right? So I don't want to do that. But I like your method. I think just tracking how many minutes you actually spent working, that's like baby steps into the true time blocking by category.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, I've tried some tools to like automatically track categories and things. Like Rescue Time is like an older one I remember using, but it's too much effort to like put every little thing in. And so I think if you just track the minutes and the hours overall, that's enough to start to realize, okay, I did work 6 hours or 8 hours today, but actually, what did I do? I was just stuck in emails. Like, how can I make sure that doesn't happen so I can work on the things that I want to?
Mm-hmm.
So you're an expert in personal branding. What role do you feel your personal brand has had behind the growth of your vacation rental management business?
Yeah, it's been huge. Okay, actually, let me back up a little bit. To be honest, for my vacation rental management business, I don't really think my personal brand has helped me at all. I grew very organically with that business. I started managing one condo, and then it was really word of mouth. Like neighbors in the condo complex would ask if I could manage their property. So that business kind of started very organically like that. But I started my personal brand to start teaching other people how to do Airbnb and short-term rental hosting. And that is where I really feel my personal brand took off. I now have a podcast. I have an annual women's short-term rental conference that I co-founded for 300 plus women every March in Scottsdale. I get a lot of speaking opportunities now, and a lot of brand campaigns that I get to work on and stuff for technology or softwares, different tools in the short-term rental space. So that's kind of where I think that the personal brand part really exploded. But I haven't had to leverage my personal brand at all, I will say, in my management company. I could tap into it if I wanted to grow that, but I'm having so much more fun now with the podcast and conference side and the course creation side that I kind of am leaving the property management just at the size that it's at.
So I'm curious, I think everybody would want to know, like, how did you identify the short-term rental niche as like, okay, this is my area of expertise. This is something people want to learn about. And then not only realize, okay, I want to create content, build a course and things around this, but then also promote yourself and grow your personal brand.
Yeah, there was I wish I could say that there was this like really thought out marketing plan, what we're doing in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Absolutely not. How it started was I was already managing some Airbnbs, and it was just friends and family that were like, how do you do that? People don't trash your place. Like, you're just letting strangers into the property. So I started making reels on Instagram, just kind of addressing those pain points. And it took off from there. I would say I had like 1,000 followers at the time. It was just friends from high school and college that were following me. And as soon as I started talking about short-term rentals, I don't know, the algorithm like picked it up or something, and my account grew very quickly from that point. So at that point, it was like, okay, clearly I'm identified a need that people are interested in, and I'm good at speaking to it. I'm getting high engagement. So I just kind of doubled down on that. And then I would say from there, it was really a matter of just listening to my audience. If they kept asking me multiple questions about something, I was like, okay, let me make like a mini course on this, subtopic, like how to screen guests appropriately. If I was getting a lot of questions on how to design a rental, how to optimize my listing, I was just kind of like making resources for these one-off questions. And it got to the point where there were so many questions. I was like, all right, let's add a weekly podcast to answer all of this. And then from there, it was like, hey, I'm listening to the podcast, but I still want more from you. Do you have a program or a mentorship or something where we could work more in depth? So that's how that started. So every single pivot I've made in the business has really just been responding to what my audience has asked for.
Yeah, I think that's really good to do. I'm curious, like, for somebody wondering though, like, how can they go and replicate that? What would you say is something that you feel you did really well that helped facilitate all that growth? I guess it sounds like maybe the consistency of like realizing, okay, this kind of post is working, like I'm going to continue making these.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. I really paid attention to the metrics, and I saw certain topics that took off better, and that's what I would double down in, or even like the type of caption. This seemed to resonate more, or the length of reel, like what kind of content was being picked up that way. And I would really just, keep doing the things that were working and ditch the ones that weren't. So that was a big thing. But I would say, I think one of the biggest things that really helped me was how do I frame this? Like, I'm never afraid with my audience to act like I don't know something, or to admit that I don't know something. And I think a lot of people, once they decide that they're going to be a course creator or a coach in a certain niche, they feel like now they have to have all the answers. And I've never pretended to do that. I'm very, very transparent that, hey, maybe I don't know about the best midterm rental strategies. My specialty is short-term rentals. So if I want to add a module to my course about midterms, I'm going to bring on a friend who I've had as a guest on my podcast who's really good at that. And then that would help me leverage their audience too, because now they can promote to their audience, hey, I'm contributing to this course. So I'm very, very big on sharing expertise and bringing in different experts and stuff. I'm totally fine to admit that I don't have the answers to this. I've done that with people who want to know about how do I promote my listings on social media. That's not me. Like I do personal branding. I don't know how to brand a short-term rental. So I'll bring on an expert for that category. And I think maybe just kind of that humility and like admitting that I don't know everything, but I can connect you with the right person. I think that that's gone a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And people feel there's like imposter syndrome and feeling like, okay, I want to prove to everyone that I know things, otherwise they're not going to want to buy from me.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you. And so the last course that I made, like my main business is building the software platform, not courses themselves now. But like I've helped more than 10,000 people build courses at this point. And so like you would think like, okay, well, I get it, right? I don't have to ask my audience because I just know how certain things should be, right? But I do ask my audience, and it's been so helpful that like the last time we did something, I was brainstorming with ChatGPT and figuring out like what's the angle of like how people would see that they connect the value of the result that we want to provide here. And so like, what is it that people are looking for? And we came up with like 3 top ideas. And then I just asked my audience and I said, okay, guys, like ChatGPT said, this one's the best. What do you guys think of like these 3? What do you want to learn? And it was surprising to me because you would think like, oh, I should be able to figure this out. Like I've had this audience for a while. I've been communicating with them. I should probably already know it, but I found all these interesting things that I hadn't thought about. And if I spent more time on it without just asking, maybe some of those things I would have guessed or figured out myself, but I'm sure that there would be other things that I would have just missed. And it's so much easier to just say, hey guys, like, can you help me with this? And can you tell me what you're looking for? And how powerful that is.
This literally just happened to me. I'm reframing one portion of my course right now, and I wanted to ask people what topics they're interested in. And I threw this one in honestly thinking it would get the least number of responses, but it was actually one of the most popular topics. But I said, how many of you are interested in learning about investing outside of real estate, but maybe investing in businesses or other opportunities? And that was the most voted on topic, which really surprised me because I feel like my whole audience came to me for real estate. But it just goes to show, like, if your audience follows you for that, they're probably interested in other types of investments too. But I've just always had this identity that I'm short-term rental girl. Like, that's what people are following me for. So I'm really excited. Now we're going to add like a whole portion on how to figure out how to invest in growing businesses. And I'd love to team up with people I know who are developing softwares and tech in the short-term rental space and maybe get in as early angel investors in that. But that's one I honestly don't know what made me like throw that topic in, but I'm so glad I pulled on it because it was overwhelmingly the most popular choice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think people will tend to just get hung up there for a little bit and either go with their kind of gut, which may be wrong because they didn't ask their audience, or just be like wondering, man, what's the best answer for this? But you can just ask and it becomes so much easier.
And it's fun that way too, because then when you launch whatever you've been working on, it's like, you guys voted on this. Like, here it is. You really, I feel like the audience is like evangelized in that. Like, they're like, we were part of this. Like, we voted on this topic. So we want to see it come to fruition rather than you just throw something at them. And it's like, hey, give me more money. I came out with another module.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you said that you kind of enjoy what you're doing now with the personal branding and the course and everything. What is it that you think made that so enjoyable versus like just focusing on the short-term rentals?
I think it's probably just the ability to talk to more people. I really, really like, I found that I really do like coaching and mentoring, and I find that very fulfilling. I still do love short-term rentals. I manage a portfolio of 10 properties, but it's different with, the guests that come in and check out. I really try to give my guests space during their stay. And it's like, I'm here if you need me, you can reach out anytime, but I'm not going to bug them. I know some Airbnb hosts are really big on like, tell me all of your exact plans. Like, we'd love to know. And I kind of leave that in my guests, like the ball's in their court to let me know how much they want. And so, and after they check out after like 2 or 3 days, that's it. I really never hear from them again. But with some of my students, we've been working together for years now, and I've seen them invest in properties, flip them, renovate them. Now there's continued questions of how do I optimize my listing, or I had this problem with a guest. It's just such a more fruitful relationship, and like I can really see like the impact that we're making together, so I find it much more rewarding.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. It's something really fulfilling. And you've got this podcast, No Vacancy, that is in the top 1% of podcasts worldwide. So I think that's super impressive, and I'm curious if there's anything you can share of like what you think helped to achieve the growth and kind of success in the podcast.
Yeah, here's my biggest tip for this one. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but the most success I've seen with the podcast is when I invite on lesser known guests. So I think a lot of podcasters that start feel like I have to get the big name guests. They're going to be the ones that share it to their huge audience of 1 million people. And that's how I'm going to grow. And what I found is some of those bigger name guests, first of all, a lot of them have like active brand contracts sometimes, and they can't necessarily be as transparent as you want them to, or even as they want to. And the other thing is, for a lot of those kinds of creators, I think that the novelty of being a guest on a podcast has worn off a little bit. They're not as eager to share the episode, or even if they have a big audience, it's like their audience has seen so much from them already. Whereas when I invite lesser known guests who just have a unique story to tell, but maybe they're not huge on social media, but it's somebody I met at a conference or something, and I just thought they'd be a great person to interview, those people will share the audience like far and wide with will share the episode far and wide with their friends and family. Cause I think it's like, whoa, I was on a podcast. This is so cool. Everyone go listen. They're so proud of it. Like those are some of my top most shared episodes. And I think there's a lot of podcasts about short-term rentals. I'm not the first to do it. And so a lot of the guests you'll hear, it's like, I've already heard them on this podcast or this one. The content gets recycled a little bit. But when you find that unique guest who might not be on social media and like you've really gotten to extract like good info out of them, I love being able to be the one that like brought someone forward and highlight their story. So that's my biggest tip. Like, don't be intimidated that I don't have the pull right now to get these big name guests, because I don't think that's how I grew my show at all. I think it was really finding people with great stories to tell.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. And I heard the same thing from Andrew Warner. He had this podcast business. He interviewed over 2,000 entrepreneurs, and I had him on the show, and I was wanted to learn from him about like interviewing and how can creators interview people, make their own podcast. He said the same thing, that like he's had the founder of Airbnb on his show and things like this.
Oh,
And
that's
he
still a
said,
goal of mine. Don't get me wrong.
yeah, and he said that the most popular episodes were these lesser known people who are not really famous in any way, but they had these interesting stories. And I completely agree, especially nowadays. There are so many podcasts, and the bigger names are on so many podcasts that it just kind of doesn't even make sense for them to tell their audience, oh, look, I was on another podcast just like yesterday and the day before. And so even if they did, it's not going to get the same exposure or attention as like maybe when podcasts like first started growing in popularity. And yeah, so I think that's an excellent tip.
Yeah, it's cool to be the one when maybe someone in their personal life has been asked over and over, what do you do? What do you do? How do you do it? And then to be the one where they finally sit down and give you 45 minutes undivided attention. Now they can tell people, like, if you've wanted to hear my story, here it is. And I don't know, I take so much pride that like I'm the one who finally got them to spill their guts.
Any tips you would have for somebody if they say, okay, I want to do this. I want to go forward with the podcast. That sounds great. I want to try to interview these people that may not be known about. How do you ask the right questions to somebody who's maybe not used to being interviewed or is on a podcast like this?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I want to be totally honest here. It comes very naturally to me. Like, this is just, I don't know. I do think I have a good knack for asking the right questions. So I think that helps. But I think if this is something that maybe you do need more practice for, what I would do is listen to other interviews and podcasts. And if you feel like you got a good answer to a question or you just learned something new from that guest, go back and listen to how the interview asked it. Like, just study the same, it's the same for social media. Like, a lot of my strategy with reels that are engaging is which reels am I pausing on in my scroll? Which ones am I liking? Which ones am I sharing with my friends and sending and saving? And take notes of what drew you into that content. So I would do the same thing. If you feel like you pulled out a really good, or if an interviewer pulled out something really good from a guest, go back and listen to how they framed that question.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So anything else you would share about how having this podcast has helped you either to build your brand or kind of expand your reach and connect with like the wider community as a whole?
Yeah, I think one of the most underrated parts of having a podcast, it's everyone wants to think about how can I monetize it or how can I just have such a big podcast. But for me, one of my favorite parts is how many people it's given me access to. There are so many people that, we're course creators, so we know that we charge for our time. And usually if you want to pick someone's brain for an hour, they'll send you their Calendly link and you can book a time and have a whole conversation or consultation with them. But for me, it's like, hey, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? And it's been a great way to get people, everybody wants the exposure. So everybody will come on that you ask pretty much. And I think it's a really great way to kind of like pick someone's brain selfishly, but get access to people that you normally wouldn't be able to otherwise. So that's a huge part of it too. Like, even if your podcast doesn't take off right away or it's not monetized from day one, I think that there's other ways to measure success or outside of monetary income, or exposure. There's other ways to determine if it's a successful venture. And I think that's one of them, just the people that you get to talk to.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I've said before that I would still be doing this podcast, even if it had like no marketing value to our business, just because I get to sit down and talk with interesting people all the time.
Yep. I say that same thing too. I'm lucky that mine took off, and it is monetized now and has its own brand and everything. But even if it didn't, I just love these kind of conversations, and I would still be asking people to come on and, talk to 5 listeners.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to other creators out there who are looking to establish a strong personal brand, regardless of the niche that they're kind of trying to focus on?
I guess I would say just keep sticking to what feels right for you. There's a couple things I haven't done that I think a lot of creators would say was the wrong move. I'm not on TikTok at all, for one example. It just never, that app has not appealed to me. I feel like I would waste so much time on there. And I know everyone says you should be on all the platforms and have mass exposure, but that's just one that I really feel like I would just end up wasting time on it. And I don't necessarily think my audience is there either. I think it's mostly Gen Z and they might not be in a position to invest in real estate anyway. So I'm happy sticking with Instagram as my main platform. So I would just say kind of do whatever feels right. I mean, we just talked a bunch about podcasting, but if podcasting feels really intimidating to you and you don't want to get behind a microphone, like you don't need a podcast to build a personal brand. Maybe for you, I don't know, try YouTube shorts, or maybe TikTok is the right move. So even though there's so much noise out there on what you should do, just kind of, I would say stick to what feels right. People are going to sense if you're starting something that's inauthentic to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I have one more question for you, and that is on this show, I'd like to have every guest ask a question to the audience. So if you could ask our audience anything, whether something you're curious about or kind of want to just get people thinking about, what would that be?
Yeah, I would ask the audience to think about what niche you might be an expert in. When I got started, I really didn't even think of myself as an Airbnb expert, but just the questions that people started asking me, like I said, oh, you do this? Like, you're not worried about guests trashing your place? And I realized I am now a source that people are turning to for info on this. Think about what that is in your life that people are consistently asking you things about. Is it like a recipe, or how you lost the baby weight so quickly, or how you're able to get your laundry done? Like, whatever it could be, I mean, I don't know, how you grow your tomatoes in your backyard. Like, there's something that people are asking you questions on, and that right there will tell you that that's, you start putting it out there. And I think if you see that the social media response is there, that's your niche right there.
All right. Well, Natalie, thanks so much for coming on the show. Before we get going, where else can people find you online?
Thanks so much, Brian, for having me. The best place to connect with me is just on Instagram at Natalie Palmer. And then from there, you can find links to my podcast, my annual conference, and any courses that I'm currently launching.
All right. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you.